Hey guys, so welcome to this new video. Exciting times ahead. We are going to be looking at authentication, user authentication in our school management system. Now, up to this point, we've been looking at how we'd go about creating content, putting in our database, creating courses, students, but we haven't really looked at controlling who can do what. And that's what user authentication is really all about, putting in that one, need to register, and two, login mechanism, and restricting access based on if you're registered versus if you're not registered, what can you access if you are registered, those kind of things. And that is where we want to start off today. From the very beginning of this tutorial, you would have noticed in the top right hand corner of our nav bar that we had a register button and we had a login button. Those have been there the entire time. I haven't clicked on them up until this very video when we will actually see what happens. Now, it's noteworthy that this would have been generated for you from the get-go. And when I say the get-go, I mean when you were creating the project. There was an option there that asked you what kind of authentication you want, and it had something for individual accounts and such and so forth. We'll get into that. I'll bring you back through those steps so you can reacquaint yourself with those options. Had you selected no authentication, then no work would have been done beforehand. Had you selected individual accounts at the very least, which is what I did, you would have gotten these buttons as well as some auto-generated code that would have been in the whole project template as we would have seen it from the start. So to begin, we're going to walk through Visual Studio, just create a mock project, and you will get to see the exact options that I was referring to. So here we have Visual Studio once again, and this should be an all too familiar page. Once you open up Visual Studio, you are routed to this start page where they want to know, do you want a new project, etc., etc. We can just go to new project, create new project, select web application. I'm not going to give it a specific name because I'm not really going to create one. I just want to show you what I was talking about. When you select MVC, and then to the right you will see that you can change authentication. So authentication right now is set to no authentication, maybe because the last project I did, I created it without authentication. There are ways to get authentication in. You'd have to get some identity libraries and do some manual work yourself, but then you can always change authentication from the creation point and then click individual user accounts. So you do have work or school accounts which would link it to the cloud, and you have Windows authentication which would probably use like LDAP for a more intranet internal kind of setting. But then we would want to use individual user accounts because we're not necessarily sure who will be accessing. So I guess based on the nature of your project, you can use individual or you can use LDAP. But for this purpose, I'm going to use the individual user accounts. And if you read the description, they say for applications that store user profiles in a SQL database, and it also allows users to register using existing accounts for social media platforms. Alright, so it actually generates all of that code and those interfaces, and you just go in and plug in whatever is required of you accordingly. So you can just select individual user accounts, click OK, and then when you click OK, the project would then be prepared, as we know. So back to our project, where from the get-go we actually selected individual user accounts, we would be able to run a register and run a login. So I'm just going to walk quickly through the register and I'll show you how the code works. This is strictly out of the box. I have not made any modifications, and we can put in an email address. I can say, and I see I already have one here, and I can use a password. Google is suggesting a very complicated one to me. I'll just use that, and then I click register. And there we go. We're routed to the home page where we now see clearly displayed hello, that email that I just entered, and it's giving me the ability to log off. So I can click log off, and then I'm going to try and log in with those exact credentials. And I asked Google to save those credentials because, you know, the password was a bit complicated to remember. So I asked Google to save it. And you see all of these screens, that register screen, this login screen, all of those came out of the box with the individual user accounts, user identity, registration engine. So I can just click login right here. and you see that I am now routed right back to that home page where I am now logged in. All right, so in this tutorial we're going to take a tour of this whole engine, all of the code that would have been generated. If you want to add more fields, what do we need to modify, and we will get into how we can go about customizing this to our own needs.